All right. Sorry about all that. I guess we better back up. I was muted. Here's our agenda for the day. We're going to talk about upselling and cross-selling. And as I did say when I was only talking to myself, apparently, that there are going to be probably ideas that you already know, ideas that you might find new or a new twist, or maybe just hearing it another time is going to strike you in another way. And I would just suggest you take this where you're at and use what you can use. Decide what you want to add from our time together today. And because there's a lot of information, I'm going to move part of this into next week. All right, let's catch up quickly here. Make sure you have your materials ready for taking notes. That's what that slide is for. If you are using a mind map, that is terrific. In your oval on this one, instead of having the 7 dimensions of life, you would basically in that middle oval put upselling and then start building your branches as we go over things. And if you like that technique, that is terrific. I think mind maps are awesome. So obviously, since I have that in every presentation, you know that. Oh, also, I wrote a book on mind mapping about 6 months ago, and going to see if I can get that finished up and out the door. I'll keep you posted. All right, here we are back to our model, and we have now ventured into, as you can see, the bottom of the second pillar. So our first pillar is get ready. And there we talked about our hidden motivators, think like a millionaire, and getting your customers to love you. In our second pillar now, we've been talking about target marketing, revenue streams. We did that for 2 sessions. And now we've got upsell and cross-sell magic. And then we will talk about growing and putting it all together. Do a little to get a lot, master the money, and putting together your A team. Today, with upselling and crossing selling, there is a lot of information, and I just encourage you to take what you can take. If you want to go back and listen to the replay, that's always an option for you. And because there's so much information, I decided it was too much, and I'm going to put some of that into next week when we talk about starting small, because it just gets to be too much sometimes. And even if you're familiar with these concepts, it can be a lot to put into one session. Let's talk then. Let's get started here and talk about upselling and cross-selling. You can see the definition for upselling, and that involves encouraging customers to purchase a more expensive or upgraded version of the product or service that they are considering. And upselling does a couple different things. It allows businesses, your business, to capitalize on existing customer trust and satisfaction. And big deal is that this will raise the average transaction value, the average amount of that sale. And that is a real plus, a good thing. And again, upselling and cross-selling. It doesn't matter if you remember the terms. And if you're trying to come up with that little memory jogger for upselling, just remember upgrade, upsell. You're doing something that is going to take them to a higher level product, and it also is going to cost a little bit more, or maybe it'll be a lot more depending on your product or service. Cross-selling, then the second thing we're going to talk about today. Let's see what do we mean by cross-selling? Well, cross-selling is the art of offering complementary products or services. So now you're going to put together more of a package deal for your customers, and this enhances the customer's initial purchase. Cross-selling, as you can see in our definition, is a valuable technique for increasing the customer's overall purchase value while you are providing them with a more comprehensive solution. And we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about some examples. Again, take what you can from this and add a new twist to what you're doing, add some new information. We're going to just touch a little bit here on the benefits of using either of these or both of these techniques. So the first is revenue growth. When we encourage customers to spend more or make additional purchases, and that is using upselling and cross-selling, it can significantly boost our company's revenue without having to acquire new customers. And as you know, there are 4 different ways to grow your revenue. And if you can work with existing customers, it's a lot less costly than trying to get out there and knock on doors or do whatever you need to do to get new customers. A great strategy, work with your current customers. The second point here is in customer retention. When customers feel understood and catered to, they are more likely to remain loyal to your company. And upselling and cross-selling can enhance the overall customer satisfaction and their customer experience. And this then leads to longer-term business relationships. Because who doesn't like to be catered to or paid attention to, right? Simple concept. And the third point I mentioned here briefly is improving customer satisfaction. And when upselling and cross-selling are done right, this can really add value to the customer's initial purchase. And because now they have greater value in that purchase, they are going to be more satisfied with their purchase decision. Fourth point here is streamlined sales process. And since upselling and cross-selling involve offering tailored solutions to your existing customers, the sales process becomes more efficient and personalized. I might have faded off there. Personalized was the last word that I said. And fifth point is another benefit of competitive advantage. By effectively utilizing cross-selling and upselling, a small business can differentiate yourself from the competition and position yourselves as a valuable partner to your clients or customers. And when you can be different, if you haven't heard me rant and rave about differentiation, then maybe you've missed some of my ranting. Anyway, differentiation is absolutely essential. It's one of the game changers in a small business. And when you can better serve your customer because you're providing them with a better product than they originally thought they needed or better service, they're going to be happy, and you now have a competitive advantage if you can put together products and services, or just a package of services that you offer. When you can put that together, you give them a better solution. And as we said, that sets you apart from the competition and gives you a competitive advantage. I was just going to pause there. If any of those particularly stood out, put a little star, highlight, or whatever. And I put together a few visuals. Obviously, we all like 5-star ratings. We like that little pile of money over there in the right corner. And who doesn't want to be happy in what we're doing, as well as having happy customers? Let's look at some strategies for effective customer upselling and cross-selling. And there's strategies here that kind of cross over into both of them. The first thing is to understand customer needs. Super important. And I've probably ranted and raved on that a few times already. You want to thoroughly understand your customers' pain points, their goals, their preferences, so that you can then tailor your upselling and cross-selling strategies accordingly. You want to also provide value. You want to make sure that when you are upselling or cross-selling, that your suggestions to the customer genuinely add value to their purchase. And customers obviously are going to be more receptive to accept those offers that benefit them. So you want to talk about value and show how the ideas you bring to them are going to add value. Third point is leverage data. Of course, that's not too much different from the first point here. You want to use your customer data and purchase history to identify opportunities and make informed recommendations to your customers. And as always, these ideas have to add value and be good ideas for the customer. We're not just out there trying to push product or service and get sales and get the numbers up. We have to make sure that all these solutions we bring to our customers work for them and benefit them. The fourth point here is training your team. And if your team is a team of 1 or a team of 2 or of 25 or more, we obviously need training. And sometimes we forget that maybe it's we ourselves who need some training. Anyway, you want to equip yourself, your sales team, your customer service team, if you have customer service people, and give them the knowledge and the skills to use upselling and cross-selling effectively and ethically. So it does take some time to make sure that everybody is on the same wavelength and able to do this. So get that team together, put those ideas together, and come up with a game plan. Now, we want to use data. Data can be extremely powerful and a great tool for us to use in our business. We're going to talk about that a little bit here. And really using data and using the power of data can give you remarkable results in your upselling or cross-selling. And you want to really have a foundation for what you're doing in your upselling and cross-selling. So data gives you that and really helps you then get on the right path when you're suggesting these ideas to your customers. Let's take a look then at using data and using that to identify opportunities. And the second thing we're going to talk about here, because I think we talked about that. Well, actually with data, what you're trying to do is you're trying to look at your customers' behavior, look at their preferences, look at past purchase history. This will give you so much information on their needs and pain points. And then this empowers you to come up with relevant and timely upselling and cross-selling solutions. And this increases the likelihood that your customer is going to accept these offers, which we kind of talked about a little bit already. And there's really no point to doing this if you don't have it grounded in some sense of customer need and some reality. The second point here is segmentation for personalization. And we talked about segmentation and target marketing previously, and it is just so important. So hopefully you've got some information, pull out your index card that has your target market information or segmentation variables that you decided to focus on. Get that information and start using that. And when you are then upselling and cross-selling, this is great information to have because you want to segment your customers by their traits. So you can then come back and you can tailor your upsell or cross-sell solution because of the variables and behaviors that they share in common. And it's great. Hopefully you've got customers where you've got a cluster of them, or maybe all of them have the same kind of segmentation variables. And you're probably going, okay, what does that mean again? Well, let's just think about one of my clients' manufacturer. They make rubber belting. I know that might sound like a pretty darn exciting product line to you. I love working with them. Anyway, so let's say that they make belting to run in other factories. So they make the belting and they might say, okay, well, let's take a look. One of our really good markets is food manufacturers. Well, then they might look at that a little more and they might say, okay, are they manufacturers of canned goods? How about maybe they're a cheese manufacturer? Well, what kind of packaging do they use for cheese? Well, maybe things are coming down the line and they're in packages that are, the buy your 1 cup of shredded cheese, your 2-cup pack, whatever. Okay, so they can be running in that. How about this cheese manufacturer? Maybe they make bricks of cheese, and those are packaged a little differently. And maybe how they run on the belting, the rubber belting line, maybe that is a little different. So even within a food manufacturer, you can segment that. Like I said, maybe it's a cheese company, maybe it's a canned good, maybe everything they do is in boxes. Well, what size boxes? Are they big, gigantic cereal boxes, or are they the boxes more like your mac and cheese comes in? And it's funny when we start to think about it, there's probably all kinds of little details and ways that we can segment our market. And even if we aren't doing something, how would I say this, terribly different, just knowing all of this makes us better understand the customer. And when we know those kinds of details, then we can also tailor our upselling and cross-selling. And maybe it doesn't have to be a whole lot different, but maybe the way we talk about it is different. I know when I was working with my company in the SaaS world and they worked with veterinarians, there's this whole language that if you're talking to people that raise birds, chickens and turkeys, those are flocks, and you better make sure you use the right language versus those that are in dairy and have cattle, or those that raise pigs. You better not call things the wrong terminology. So even within something that seems really, really similar, getting languaging right might be a big part of what we do. All right, let's move on. Then there's a topic here. Our third point, as you can see, is predictive analytics. And this is just something that you may or may not be familiar with. It's used a lot in that whole world of data analytics. It's just a pretty hot topic. And if you don't have access to something more sophisticated like bigger companies do, that's okay. You can figure out your own predictive analytics. And this is where you use historical data to forecast future trends and behavior patterns, shopping patterns, buying habits, all of that kind of stuff in your customer. And if you are a small business, as most of us are here, and you want to really do some good upselling and cross-selling strategies that are going to work for them, before you figure that out, take a look at your history and see what that leads you to predict or anticipate or believe is going to happen for your customer, or in obviously this situation, what their needs are going to be that you can solve and what they're going to be more likely to buy. And some of this is, let's say that you sell a product and you've got some supporting products that go along with it, maybe supplies. All right. Well, you could probably track the supplies, and you're going to pretty much know how each customer uses the supplies. And you could set up even a system where you're proactive in reaching out to them when you know they're going to be running low on supplies versus them doing that. And it doesn't have to be super difficult. Take a look at your information. All right. The fourth point is utilizing CRM systems. And you might say, well, that's for big companies too. Well, actually, you can do this. And again, some things you can do manually. If you don't have a system in place that's automated, that's okay. Maybe you don't have thousands of customers, because most small businesses don't. And also take a look at HubSpot. There are other free CRM systems that you can use, or fairly low cost. I mentioned HubSpot because they're a pretty significant player, and they provide a lot of great resources. They've got education materials available and all kinds of good stuff. So I think HubSpot is pretty worthwhile to check out. If you need other ones, I can track down somebody that can give you some information on that. Anyway, in using your CRM, whether you have a system or you're going to do some of this manually, you want to again look at the customer interactions. And that's at least where, if you've got HubSpot, it's pretty easy to make sure that you're tracking your communications. And that can even be helpful or a good start. Take a look at the purchase history, look at any engagement metrics if you have that kind of information, and really use this to give yourself a good comprehensive view of the individual customers and see where they're at. What's their journey been? Excuse me. And use this to get deeper customer relationships. And this is going to make your upselling, cross-selling more effective. I'm sorry, I need a drink. Oh, sorry about that. I picked up a bit of a bug on the plane. The next point is to optimize your pricing. And again, look at any data you have, any history, and see how you can come up with different price points or discounts to effectively sell, and put that in part of your upsell or cross-sell strategy. All in all, taking a look at this, we can see that using data obviously is so important. Most of what we've talked about here involves data, doesn't it? So all of this you will have hopefully automated somewhere, or if you do it by hand, that's okay. Start where you're at. Just figure out what information you have so that you can better understand those customers. And when you do your cross-selling and upselling, then you're going to be right on. And I wanted to mention, I didn't pull the book out. There's a book called Challenger Sale that is really, really, really good. And the whole premise is that when you're selling to your customer, you want to know their problems pretty much better than they do. And at least you want to know everything you can about their struggles, their pains, and all of that. And then your job is to figure out how you can solve their problem because you know your company and your capabilities. And when you come back and you can talk to a customer about things that they are experiencing or frustrated with, and you can give them a solution, they are going to think you are amazing. These were the things that we just talked about again. So if you like a visual, here's a visual to take a look at. Identify those opportunities, do your segmentation work so you can personalize things, use predictive analytics, and that's just looking at the data you have and being able to say, well, that means that this is likely to happen. Use a CRM if you can, even get started with something as simple as HubSpot to track your email communications. Optimize your pricing, figure out what you can do to price appropriately and work that in. All right, now we need to talk some specifics here about upselling. So let's take a look at this. The first thing, again, and you know what? This is great because a lot of this is review. You already know this. So this will be an easy one for you. Review your customer purchase history. That's the first thing. That's your start. So again, take a look because just your history with a customer can be a treasure trove of insights. You can get a lot of great information. Sometimes it seems like it's maybe not there, and yet until you start digging in, you don't really know what you've got. It's great use of information usually. And if you had a customer that, for example, purchased a software package, then you could suggest offering a more advanced one that has additional features and benefits. And of course, when you're talking to customers, it's value, it's benefits that you're going to be talking about. You probably have another product that's going to give them a better solution, and they don't even know about it. Second point, let's talk about doing a customer needs assessment. You want to engage your customers in needs assessments to understand their pain points and their requirements better than, well, probably better than you might think you know, and just keep adding to that information. And if you can conduct some surveys, do some additional work on that, that helps you fill in this information. You can always do things like say, hey, I'm doing my quarterly review. I want to see how we're doing, make sure everything is working as well as possible for you. Do you have, I don't know, 15 minutes to talk about it, whatever. Whoops. And do that, talk to them, get this information and document it. If you've got, I keep touching the wrong thing. You've got a team, share this with your team and make sure also if they're talking to customers in customer service work or anything else that they be sure and share with you what they're finding out. And third point, track customer behavior and engagement. So really want to look at any way that they are using your product and services. And depending on your business, if you have user groups, those are great because you're going to get feedback. And if you don't have user groups, you might want to think about, is that something that you want to add, because that gets a dialogue going. And if you're doing some onboarding webinars, any of that, just gather any information that you can. Try to also look for any patterns in usage and how frequent people are engaging and interacting with different things, like any promotion you do, any email you do, track all of that. Well, talking about another thing where you might go, that's a lot of work. Well, you know what? Most of this stuff you do know. Just document it instead. Some of you are spreadsheet fanatics. Hey, it's great stuff to put in a spreadsheet. You don't need to have all the big corporate Fortune 500 analytics at your fingertips. You can do a lot without that. Leverage also seasonal and life cycle triggers. Now, even in the B2B space, there can be seasonal things that happen that affect their business. So pay attention to that. Sometimes we think, that's all consumer stuff. Not really. And there can be different events. You know, I come out of the med device world, as you probably know, and we geared so much to the medical meetings. American Heart and American College of Cardiology were a couple of our big ones. And that drove a lot of things for any company selling into that particular specialty. Keep that in mind, because there might be trade shows, there might be other events that you might not have even thought of. That could be something that you want to focus on. Upselling during customer interactions is our fifth point here. Oh my goodness, I have totally hit the wrong things. All right, upselling in your customer interaction. So again, when we're talking to customers, and this is where anybody in customer service could be a real asset, is for them to be trained so that they're listening for those things, and either they're able to upsell or cross-sell, or they make sure that there's follow-up done and talk to the customer and say, hey, I'm going to have Bob or Mary give you a call about that, because I think there's some things that we could do that would give you a greater solution. 6th point, analyzing customer feedback. Again, customer feedback is an absolute goldmine of information, and this can lead to upselling opportunities. Keep that in mind. Pay close attention to customer suggestions, any complaints, any requests. If people say, hey, can you guys do such and such? And you're going, yeah, not right now. Keep track of all that stuff, because that just is worth a lot. And again, when you can then tailor or upsell with these customers, now you are getting them a better solution and setting yourself apart from the competition, which is always what we love to do. All right, we're down to point number 7, create segments for upselling. And again, this is a little bit repetitive maybe because we already talked about segmentation variables. Again, still, within that clientele that you have, there can be some specific things that, let's say you have 100 customers, and let's say that there are 10% that have some unique peculiarities. Well, maybe that's an opportunity for an upsell. So really take a look at anything that you have, because maybe, again, there's something unique about their industry, their company size, their revenue. Just think about all the different things that are those segmentation variables, or as we would otherwise call them, ways to describe a customer, and think about, is there anything there that you can use that helps you figure out a better solution, and then you upsell that customer. 8th point, upsell at the point of sale. Sometimes you got to really watch your timing, because you don't want to ever come off like we're just trying to sell stuff, sell. You really have to be engaged in talking to the customer and listening and going back and forth. This is a discussion. This is a problem-solving session. And when you can approach it, I think, in that way, that you want to hear everything that's going on and come up with the best solution for them, that gives you an opportunity to upsell, because now you understand them better. And I think they're going to understand that as well. 9th point, personalize. And this is another point of distinction that makes your upselling successful. Goes back to data and understanding the customer. So look at anything that you can about what they have recently purchased, how they've used things, or anything like that, because that can give you an opportunity to upsell or, cross-sell. When you are identifying upselling opportunities, it's a strategic process, and it requires that you have a thorough understanding of your customers' needs, their behavior and preferences, their pain points. And when you can leverage customer data and do a needs assessment and monitor the customer interactions, you are going to discover upselling opportunities that align with your customers' goals and challenges, and that you have the solution for them. When you implement personalized and relevant upselling strategies, this will not only drive your revenue and growth for your company, it also, remember, will enhance customer satisfaction and loyalty in your customer. And of course, we all want to see that happen. I put together a checklist for you. You can find this in the guide section. And if you said, all right, what were those things? And hopefully you made some notes. If you like checklists like I do, then look at this and say, okay, which are we doing now? Which do we need to do? Where do we start? When I was working with one of my clients that's in a service business, we said, all right, one of the things to do is to build your business with current customers. In essence, you could upsell or cross-sell. And so the first thing that we did was we said, all right, we need to make a list. We need to figure out what customers, and you can break it down by revenue. You might say, well, the ones that are going to be the ones that we want to target are the ones that are doing more business with us. Well, you probably got that data. So you segment your list and you make your list of maybe your top 10. Then you have to really dig in and go, well, what have they been buying? What are we doing with them? What pains do they have? And when you're looking at your top 10, for example, are they having similar pains across the board? Or are they having different pains? Really dig in and take a look at the things that we talked about here. Are there particular characteristics, variables that they all have in common or not? Really dig into that and size up. A lot of times, if you look at your top 10 or your top 5, that can be a great place to start. Now, I'm going to give you just a minute here to take a look at this. I'm going to get another shot of water, and then we will move on. We're going to talk about cross-selling. All right. Again, some of the things that we're talking about here, you already heard, and they apply to cross-selling as well as to upselling. Do you remember that definition of cross-selling? Remember, it was putting together a combination of products, sort of like a package deal, versus the upselling, which is giving them a more upgraded product. Let's talk about this then. The points here is to first understand their customer needs. Go back, find out what's going on. Where are they in need? What are their pain points? Get everything you can figure out and get that all put together. Then create a bundle. So again, something like if you sell, it's so obvious. Let's say you sell a printer, and we've all bought printers. Probably we're on that side of the equation. Let's just say that you sell printers. Well, you know that when people buy printers, they need supplies. That could be paper. That could be toner. It could be, I think those would be the two main things. Anyway, so as an easy example, what you could do if you were in that kind of business is put together a package and say, hey, here's the printer, here's your starter set. And it gives you paper and it includes the toner. And you put that together and you create a bundle. And let's say that, all right, this is a new printer and you've got supplies. It's going to be $1,000. If they bought everything separately, it'd be $1,500. Well, because they're going to buy this package, you sell it for $1,200 or something. You know, you can work out the details on that. I'm just coming up with some ideas here. And remember that there is, third point here, synergy with upselling. So as you are putting together the package and things like that, keep in mind that maybe what you've done is given them a higher level product. Now they're thinking about that. Well, maybe with that higher level product, you provide some additional support, ongoing support, and they can get training, user group, webinars. You're going to make, somebody's going to come out monthly and make sure everything is working. Whatever it is, keep in mind that a lot of times when you are able to provide a client with an upgraded product, they might need some other things that you sell. And time it right. Timing can be such a big deal. And you want to make sure that you're paying attention to where the customer is on their customer journey. And if you've done a customer journey map, hopefully that will point out some things for you. Because usually in cross-selling, if you're doing products and services that are complementary, that makes sense usually to do at the beginning of your engagement. And you just need to make absolutely sure that this is going to solve a customer problem and that doesn't come off of, oh yeah, you're just trying to sell me more crap, because that doesn't work for anybody. And again, big thing, of course, as always, is to use your data and take a look at what information you have and how do you use that? What can you do to better understand the customer? 6th point is customer success. And you want to do everything you can to make sure that this is going to be a good solution and that all these pieces that you are now bringing to the customer make sense and make them more successful in their business. You may or may not have heard there are actual experts in the, well, maybe we call them specialists. I don't know if they're experts or not. They work in the area of customer success. And you may have heard it's typically medium to larger companies that probably have this. It's still a good thing to know, is that they might say, oh, I'm going to have my customer success team call you and follow up. It is so important that we become that engaged with our customers, that we become part of their success. 7th point is tailor your cross-selling to the industry. As we talked about, my good old rubber belting company, is that there can be specifics that the industry needs certain kind of help. If you're manufacturing some kind of equipment that's used or a component that's used in the med device world, well, you need to tailor that to the industry. You need to find out how high precision does it need? What are the specs that they're doing? Is it for an implantable or not implantable? What materials are key then? If it's implantable, probably platinum or maybe stainless steel. You just have to really understand the industry that you're selling with so that you have all those pieces of knowledge that then you can bring them solutions because you understand. And I mentioned earlier the Challenger Sale Book. And when you do your research and find out everything you can about a particular industry and understand it, maybe you're involved with some trade association of that industry, or you go look at the website for a trade association to learn things. Do everything you can so that your product then can be tailored to that particular industry. And when you can tailor it, then it solves their problem better. And they are going to be like, yes, you are the one. I was working with a client just yesterday, and we were talking about a resource that we found that was a specialist working in the construction industry. So this was a company that did different parts under the marketing umbrella, primarily tactical things like websites and different kinds of communication things. And his big thing was, I am the only one that understands the construction business and works exclusively with construction companies. So I know what the issues are. I know how to talk to your customers. I know what your challenges are and all of that. So the more, again, you can tailor things to an industry, obviously, the more that customer is going to feel like you understand them and are providing them with a good solution. Educate customers on the benefits, and as much as possible, do things in a way where you are engaging the customer and they're telling you their issues and their challenges and all of that. And then you can better articulate how your product or service solves their problem. Build trust, obviously, because you're going to have good solutions and keep the communications going. You're going to build trust, and that's another important part. Here is a checklist. This, I believe, is also going to be in your guide section. Take a quick minute here and look at this and go back and look at your notes. Is there anything you want to highlight? Is there anything specific that struck you as something that you haven't been doing or makes sense for you to do when it comes to cross-selling? All right, we're going to talk a little bit about leveraging customer relationships, because that's a key point in the foundation, really, for upselling and cross-selling. So first point is build trust, confidence, and credibility. And we've talked about a lot of this and other aspects that we have reviewed here. Again, listen, and see, is there one thing that jumps out at you, or is there something here that we talk about where you go, you know what? I forgot that I was going to do something on that, or this is an area where I can make an improvement. Building trust and loyalty with customers is so important, and that sets the stage for all of what we're going to do in upselling and cross-selling. So the first part, obviously, build trust, confidence, and credibility. And that is going to build trust, confidence, and credibility, not just in you, in your products or services. And when customers have faith in your company and your products and services, they are going to be more willing to explore additional offerings that you bring to them. And trust is the foundation of successful upselling and cross-selling. And make sure that everything you bring to them is going to be a benefit, so that when you bring a recommendation, they feel like, yes, you understand them and you care about getting them a good solution. All right, second point, understand the customer goals. And when you cultivate customer relationships and get to know them better, and you've got stronger relationships, this involves understanding their goals and their objectives. And how do we get that? Well, we ask them, and regular communication and feedback helps us to stay updated on their evolving needs, because that can change over time. Things can be changing in their business, their industry, and all of that. And as long as we're keeping engaged and communicating, that really sets the stage so that, again, when we come back with our upselling and cross-selling, these suggestions are going to align with their objectives and goals. Third point, listening and empathy. Listening to your customers and showing empathy toward their challenges, their pains, their frustrations. This fosters a deeper connection. And again, you might even say, well, maybe I need to train people on listening skills. That is a really important thing to keep in mind. You want to actively engage your customers during the interactions that you have with them and take time to understand their pain points. And when you approach things this way, that you generally care about their success, this enhances their receptiveness to any of your cross-selling or upselling ideas that you're going to bring to them. And fourth point here is, again, customize the offers. We've really kind of talked about that, is to take the insights from your customer relationships, from your conversations, and take that to your upselling and cross-selling offers and customize them. Tailor your recommendations to address their specific needs and preferences as much as you can. Sometimes there's only so much we can do. Do your best to really understand what their challenges are and see how you can customize your product or service. The other thing is, sometimes it's how we talk about it. And it might just be expressing things in a different way that connects with that particular customer. Another point here is to provide exceptional customer service. And we talked about customer service and how important that was a while back. And when you have exceptional customer service, this is a powerful driver for customer loyalty. When you take care of your customers, they are going to stick with you. And I think that's pretty obvious. We all know that. They are more likely, when they have good customer service from you, to engage with upselling and cross-selling offers that you bring to them. So another area, again, where you probably want to invest in your training is in the area of customer service. If you've got customer service people that work with you, maybe you do that. Maybe you've got somebody that does that part-time. Make sure they have all the tools that they need and they are well trained so they understand how important it is. Sixth point is anticipate the customer needs. Again, I'll go back to the customer, the book on Challenger Sales. It's masterful in that. And you want to really, by listening to your customers and getting all that information, anticipate what kind of needs that they have. Maybe they haven't quite articulated it. Maybe they haven't even figured it out. So in your discussion with them, this will likely emerge, and then you find out what future requirements they have that might be emerging, might be coming. Things, again, might be changing in their industry. There might be some regulation changes, and that could change what you offer them. Bottom line is just really pay attention and listen, and pay attention so that you can anticipate their needs. And as we've talked about before, build long-term relationships. When you are listening to your customers and you're providing them good service, you're going to build that long-term relationship and keep that communication going. Build your system so that you are keeping in touch. And instead of focusing on those short-term gains of, hey, we just need some revenue in the door, let's make this sale, remember to prioritize your customers' success and growth, and those long-term partnerships that you develop with a client are going to give you multiple opportunities for upselling and cross-selling as their needs evolve and change over time. And the only way to know that is to keep talking to them. As we wrap up this part, keep in mind that leveraging your customer relationships is a strategic approach to maximizing the impact of your upselling and cross-selling strategies. Building trust, understanding customer goals and objectives, providing exceptional customer service, these all create an environment conducive to successful conversions, meaning when you bring them an idea, they're more likely to buy that product or service. When you personalize your offers and anticipate their needs and establish those long-term relationships or partnerships, these all contribute to the magic of upselling and cross-selling and your success in using those strategies. Then let's talk just a bit here about the power of personalization. And I'm going to give you just a moment to, again, take a look and see if there's anything that we talked about here that you want to make sure that you keep note of. And then we're going to move into a little bit more specifically on the personalizations. All righty. I think I'll take another sip of water. So the power of personalization is a valuable tool, and we want to make sure we understand it. And it really has great potential for us when we understand and can use personalization and put that into our upselling and cross-selling strategies. We want to be able to tailor our offers that we've talked about and make those recommendations to individual customers that we have, and they are going to be more engaged, and we give them a more relevant customer experience by doing personalization. And this leads, again, as we said, to higher conversion rates or closing rates. And most of us probably appreciate if we had a better closing ratio with some of our business. The first thing then is to understand personalization. What is that? I think we know pretty much. Keep in mind, though, when we talk about personalization, it's the offer. So that's our product or service. It's content that we put out. It's how we communicate. And we want to do all of these pieces based on customer data and preferences. So instead of cranking out generic upselling and cross-selling ideas, you want to use your data that we've talked about and customer insights to deliver targeted and relevant recommendations. That's the whole part we want to understand. And it's all those pieces on that customer journey map. If you use a customer journey map, if you don't use one, that's okay. Just keep in mind all of your contact with the customer. You want it to be consistent and as personalized as possible. Again, that's another area. If you use something like HubSpot, you can go in and you can code things and categorize things so that you could say, okay, well, these are my customers that are in the food business. Okay, these are the ones that are in cheese making, as I gave the earlier example. These are the ones that make boxed products. These are the ones that make snack products. And you could further personalize that. Maybe there's some regional things. It all depends. And what you really want to do is just find out everything you can, so then you can personalize things in a way that makes sense. Second point, obviously, is we've already talked about this, using customer data. This is just your backbone for personalization in your upselling and cross-selling. I think we've talked about this quite a bit. Sorry. So you want to analyze purchase history, browsing behavior, if you can. That's an area we haven't talked about before. If there's any way that you can figure out what they're looking at on your website or LinkedIn or wherever you have communications, see if there's any engagement patterns. that also gives you ideas about what's going on with them. Anything that you can do. And again, a lot of times we don't stop and think about it, do we? Because we're busy running our operation. Okay. Use segmentation. We've talked about that. So anything that helps you identify your client, any details, any variables, excuse me, and then personalize your upselling offers. Again, if it's a software package, make sure that what you're doing makes sense to them. Ugh. Sorry, I got to clear my throat. All right. And contextual cross-selling. Well, what the heck do we mean by that? Because cross-selling can leverage real-time data. If you do e-commerce or if you're involved in a current situation, you've got current data and you can then look at the context for providing that solution. Personalize your email marketing. Obviously, we talked about making sure that everything you do is personalized as much as possible and every way that you communicate with people. Now, if you're doing much on social media, that could be a little tricky. And you might want to think about how you can segment that within anything that you're doing on LinkedIn, for example. Impact on the customer experience. Again, you want to make sure that anything you're doing in upselling and cross-selling enhances the customer's experience by giving them a seamless and individualized journey with your company. Everybody is on that journey somewhere and having their own customer experience. And if nothing else, just give a little thought to that about what can you do to make sure that that experience, that customer experience that they have, makes them understand that they are valued and that you're dealing with them as a person, and that you understand their company is unique. That leads, when you can provide that good customer experience, that leads to higher customer sat, increased loyalty, and there's going to be a higher likelihood that they're going to do repeat business with you also. Pretty much an area that we want to see increasing. And an area that sometimes we forget about is data privacy and trust. And I'd say we forget about it some, and yet most of us are faced with that all the time because we know that we have to protect information about our customers and our clients. So keep that in mind. And if you're doing much online, make sure that you're doing whatever you can to make sure that everything is safe and secure. And when you keep that information confidential, and also when you remember things and you bring them up in a future conversation, that builds trust because they know you were listening and you understand them. All right. We are going to talk next time about some of the challenges. We're going to talk about, probably touch a little bit on training your team and setting some goals. And I would like to also talk about building the customer-centric approach. I think we're pretty good on that. I think it might be helpful to have some time in our next session to talk about common mistakes that people can make, because we definitely want to get off on the right foot when we're doing upselling and cross-selling. And I think we all know that we are trying to serve the customer and we know that we want to understand them. And maybe we take the approach that we're really an educator and we're helping them understand things and give them better solutions to their problems and help them be more successful. We'll see, because we'll have a little bit of time before we get into things next week. Well, I guess here we'll just go to our wrap-up page. Oh, sorry. We'll get there. Key takeaways. Some of this will be repeated next week. Understand their needs. Personalize your approach. Make sure everything you're doing is going to provide them with value. And utilize customer success managers or that concept. You don't need to have one, just use the idea and be ethical, obviously. Leverage digital channels, monitor and analyze your results. You can take a look at all of those. What I encourage you to do, because we're at a wrap, I intentionally stopped a couple times to give you an opportunity to mark your notes, see if there was something that in particular you said, oh yeah, that is a great idea, or a new idea, or an idea that I thought I was going to use before and I forgot about it. So I encourage you, before you jump into the next thing on your schedule, take a look at what we covered today. And if there are some action items or ideas that you particularly liked, mark those. Be sure that you're ready to put those into place. I would suggest that, again, you take 5 to 15 minutes every morning. Take a look at things that we went over and see what you want to use and what you can add to your plan. And yes, we are at a wrap. Thanks for being here. I look forward to seeing you next week, where we'll continue with this and talk about starting small for big impact. Have a great day and a great week. Put things in our Facebook group if you've got questions, or reach out to me. We'll see you next time. Thanks.